Hello and welcome to Grammar Skills Lesson 1. Each day we're working on grammar. We are really just learning to write better sentences and paragraphs. So for our first lesson, we're going to explore what is a clause. Now, a clause is like a grammar vocab word that you might hear sometimes. It's not clause like Wolverine clause, and it's not clause like Santa Claus. A clause is a grammar thing, and a clause is really just a group of words that have a subject and a predicate. And I'm going to explain more about what a subject and a predicate are in just a moment. But the big idea is that a clause is a crucial building block for a sentence. You might wonder, why are we learning what a clause is? Well, in order to understand how to write sentences accurately, you need to really know what is a clause. So today, we're exploring what a clause is, and then in the future lessons, we're going to use those to build better sentences. All right, so here are some clauses. This first one up here, Augie and his friends were playing card games. That's a clause. Notice I don't have any punctuation at the end, even though you might say, hey, that could be a sentence, and you'd be right. This is just a clause right now because I don't have any punctuation at the end. Here's another clause. My sister's Nintendo Switch needs to be charged. It's another clause. A third one here. Clark Lake Park is really pretty in the spring. It's another clause. And then I've got a fourth example of a clause here. Popularity isn't really important to me. So these are 4 different clauses. So in just a moment, we're going to dig in and see if we can figure out why these are clauses. All right, so a clause has 2 main parts. There's 2 things we're looking for. It needs to have a subject and it needs to have a predicate. So let's dig into what this really means. We're going to start with what is a subject. A subject is just the who or what the clause is about. A subject could be a person, like Falcon here. It could be a place, like Angkor Wat. It could be a thing, like a video game. Or it could be an idea, like friendship. All of these are examples of a subject. And you might be thinking, wait a second, I learned another word for those. I learned that those could be also called nouns. And you're right, a subject is a noun. So in clauses, there are 2 different types of subjects you're going to see. You're going to see a simple subject and a compound subject. Let's take a look at what each of these means. So the first one here, a simple subject, is when the clause is talking about only one person or thing. So examples could be the scruffy cat. My backyard, that's a place. The new Dog Man book, a thing. Excitement, an idea. All of these simple subjects, it's just one thing. And then the other one we're looking at is the compound subject, when a clause is talking about 2 or more people or things. So your compound subject could be Marcus and Dion. They're just 2 people. The playground and a library, 2 places. Legos and building blocks, 2 things. Joy and sadness, 2 ideas. Now, it could be more than that. You could bust out your trusty comma and say Marcus, Michael, and Dion. You could have 3 things. You could, instead of just saying the playground and a library, you could say the playground, the cafeteria, the gymnasium, and the library. Those are all the different subjects, but if they're all doing the same thing in the sentence, that can be my compound subject. So a compound subject is just when the clause is about 2 or more people or things. Let's see if we can think about that as we move forward. All right, so we talked about a subject. Now let's talk about what is a predicate. A predicate is what is happening in the clause. It can be what the subject is doing or what the subject is being. That's the tricky verb that gets us sometimes when it's is or was. And some of you even heard me say the word, or you might be thinking parts of speech, and you might say, I know about predicate, but I learned calling it the word verb. You are right. A predicate is just a verb. And just like we had a simple subject and a compound subject, we also have a simple predicate and a compound predicate. And the same rules apply here. A simple predicate is when there is one thing happening in the clause. So an example of a simple predicate could be ran down the street. One thing is happening. Was sad. Instead of like an action verb, this is a being verb, how they were. Will eat all the ice cream. Or is lost somewhere in the house. So those are all examples of one thing happening. Those are simple predicates. A compound predicate is when there are two or more things happening in the clause. So in these examples, we have jumped over the fence and raced into the street. Those are two things happening. First they jumped and then they raced. Here's another one. This has that being verb. Is cold and feels squishy. I picture that being like scrambled eggs that got left out on the counter. Those are being verbs, but it's being two things, cold and feeling squishy. Here's another example of a compound predicate. Opened the back door and looked inside. The first thing they did was open the back door and then they looked inside. And here's another example. Was left behind and got broken. That's still a compound predicate because there are two or more things happening in the clause. All right, now that we know what a subject is and what a predicate is, we're going to play, is this a clause? We're going to play clause or not. So let's take a look at these clauses and see if they count, if they've got a subject and a predicate. So when I look, I'm going to ask myself who or what is doing the action and what is the action. So here we have chose a game and put in the memory card. So who is doing the action? Gosh, I don't know. They didn't tell me. Okay, so it's missing a subject. Does it have a predicate? Is there an action? Ooh, there is an action. In fact, I'm even going to highlight it in red. We found chose a game, and put in the memory card. So we found a compound predicate, but it doesn't have a subject, so we have to say, no, that one is not a clause. Doesn't count. Let's look at the next one. The neighborhood kids knocked on my door and tried to sell me fundraiser candy. Ooh, I am looking for, does it have a subject, someone doing the action, and a predicate, the action that's happening. So who's doing the action in this sentence? The neighborhood kids, right? They're the ones doing stuff. And what are they doing? The neighborhood kids knocked on my door and tried to sell me fundraiser candy. So we have a subject there in blue, the neighborhood kids, and we have a predicate, knocked on my door and tried to sell me fundraiser candy. It has a compound predicate because those kids are doing two things. That one totally counts. It is a clause. Let's take a look at these two examples. The bowl of apples is full. Ooh, that one's harder because it's not a person doing something. It's a thing. The bowl of apples is full. The bowl of apples is what this sentence is about. It's about a bowl of apples. And what are the apples doing or being? They are being full. The bowl of apples is full. Is that being verb. So if it has a subject and a predicate, they're both simple. The bowl of apples is one thing. Is full is the one thing they're doing. I can say, yep, that one's a clause. Let's look at this one at the bottom. Sean and his annoying little brother. I have Sean and I also have his annoying little brother. They're the ones doing things. So that would be a compound subject. Oh, but they're not doing anything. Sean and his annoying little brother. Yeah, they're not doing anything. So they are that's just a subject. It's not a clause. All right, so this is the task you're going to be working with. You're going to be trying to find the subject and the predicate to determine is it a clause or is it not a clause.